In villages all over the world, life is this really complex web of land, labor, and money. Today, we're going to unravel that web. We're going to try and understand how people survive, what systems might be holding them back, and the surprising ways that everyone, from the poorest laborer to the wealthiest landowner, is connected. So, really, it all boils down to this one question. What does it actually take to survive in a village? And, it's not just about farming. It's about opportunity. It's about struggle. And it's the daily reality for millions. To find some answers, we're going to zoom in on one specific place. All right, let's head to Kopatu, a village right near the coast in Tamil Nadu, India. It's this place surrounded by low hills. And for a lot of people, life really does revolve around the seasons. But as you're about to see, it's way more complicated than just that. I mean, Kopatu is just a hive of activity. Paddy, or rice, is the main crop, for sure. But you'll also see these beautiful coconut groves and mango orchards. The main street looks like a bazaar, just bustling with tea shops, grocers, and tailors. You've got everyone from blacksmiths to mechanics, and they all have a role to play in this really tightly knit, interdependent economy. But even with all that variety, the foundation of life for most families here is agriculture. So to really understand a place like Kalpuru, we've got to meet the people whose lives are literally shaped by the soil. Their stories, well, they reveal everything about how this village works. First up, let's meet Thulasi. Her story represents what is probably the most vulnerable group in the entire village economy, the agricultural laborers. These are the folks who own no land at all. See, Thulasi and her husband Raman are landless. Their entire livelihood depends on working for a large landowner named Ramalingam. The thing is, her work is completely seasonal and totally uncertain. She only works when Ramalingam calls, for very specific jobs like transplanting rice saplings, weeding the fields, or harvesting. And the work is just incredibly demanding. Tulasi herself says that as she gets older, bending for hours and hours with her feet stuck in water is physically painful. That's the daily reality of her labor. And for a full day of that back-breaking work, we're talking 8:30 in the morning till 4:30 in the evening, Ramalingam pays her just 40 rupees. Now that's actually less than what others might get, but she sticks with him because in a world that's so uncertain, he at least provides reliable, if seasonal, work. This timeline here shows her working year. But what's really important isn't what you see, it's what's missing. Notice those huge gaps. She has work from, say, June through January. But then what happens from February to May? Well, during those months, the fields are empty, and so is her income. And that lack of a steady income means there's just no safety net. When her daughter got sick, Thulasi had no choice but to borrow money for treatment directly from her employer, Ramalingam. And to pay back that loan, they had to sell their family cow, which was a really crucial source of security and a little bit of extra income for them. Just one emergency can wipe out years of hard work. Okay, so now let's meet Sekar. He's a small farmer, which means he's technically a step up the economic ladder from Tulasi because he owns his own land. But, as we're about to find out, owning land doesn't automatically mean you're secure. Sekar owns 2 acres of land. He and his family, they do all the work themselves. But here's the catch. The harvest from those 2 acres is only enough to feed his family for about 8 months of the year. For the other 4, he has to scramble to find another way to make money. And this is the trap he's in. To buy seeds and fertilizers, Sekar has to take a loan from a local trader. But there's a condition tied to that loan. He has to promise to sell his paddy back to that same trader. Of course, the trader knows this and offers him a lower price than what he could get on the open market. It's this impossible choice that keeps him from ever getting the full value for his hard work. This situation is so common it actually has a name, being caught in debt. It's when a loan, often just for basic stuff like seeds, starts to spiral out of control. One bad harvest or low prices can make it impossible to pay back, forcing a farmer to borrow even more just to get by. This is a massive source of distress in so many rural areas. So what does Sekar do to earn money during those lean months? He works in a rice mill, helping collect paddy from other farmers in the area. And guess who owns that rice mill? Yep, the very same large landowner we've been talking about, Ramalingam. And that brings us to our final person, Ramalingam. He's the large farmer at the very center of Kalpatu's economy. And his story, well, it reveals the power structure that connects everyone we've met so far. The contrast between their lives is just stark.
Sekar cultivates 2 acres. Ramalingam cultivates 20. Sekar works the land himself. Ramalingam hires laborers like Tulasi. Sekar is forced to take high-interest loans from traders. Ramalingam gets low-interest loans from government banks. And beyond farming, Ramalingam has all these other income streams. He owns the rice mill where Sekar works, he owns shops, and he even lends money. His wealth and his influence stretch far beyond his fields.
So, the patterns we're seeing in Kalpatu, this web of labor, debt, and inequality, they aren't unique. This is a story that plays out all across rural India. The crops might change, the geography might be different, but the challenges, they often stay exactly the same. Let's take a quick look beyond the paddy fields.
Livelihoods are really shaped by geography, right? So in central India, families might combine farming with collecting and selling things from the forest like honey or special leaves. Up in the hills of Nagaland, communities practice this incredible terrace farming, carving steps into the mountains and often working together. And of course, in coastal areas, entire villages depend on fishing.
In a fishing village called Pudapet, for example, the income is shared. After a catch is brought in and auctioned off, the money gets split into 4 parts, one for each of the fishermen, and a 4th share that goes to the person who owns the boat, the nets, and the engine. But, and this is the key part, they face a very familiar problem. During the 4-month monsoon season, when they can't go out to sea, they survive by borrowing from a trader, which then forces them to sell their future catches to that same trader. That cycle of debt, it appears here too. So, after hearing these personal stories, what does the big picture tell us? Let's zoom out a bit and connect the dots by looking at some of the national numbers. Tulasi's struggle is the reality for a massive, massive number of people. Nearly 2 out of every 5 rural families in India are agricultural laborers, totally dependent on finding work in other people's fields, and many of them, just like her, are landless. And this chart, wow, this really reveals the staggering inequality in who owns the land. A huge 80% of farmers in India are small farmers, just like Sekar. But the other 20%, the large farmers like Ramalingam, they cultivate the vast majority of all the land. This concentration of land is the real foundation of the economic power we saw back in Kalpatu. And so we've come full circle. We've seen how land, labor, and access to money create this system of deep-rooted dependence. Tulasi depends on Ramalingam for work. Sekar depends on a trader for loans and on Ramalingam for a job. It raises a really crucial question. When you see this profound inequality laid out, you have to ask, in a world that's changing so fast, is a system like this truly sustainable for the millions who live inside it?